Do not mind the source of this tweet. I know probably some of you guys, if you're looking at this, you're like, oh my God, you're on Non-Central. Just so we're clear, this is the link that they've provided, finance.senate.gov. This is a 50 fucking page document. As much as I love to talk, as much as I could ramble on, I'm not going to sit here and go through 50 pages worth of tax reform. All this tweet did was summarize the key points. The majority of these, actually all of these, are fucking terrible. They serve only to enrich the 1%. Lower and middle class people are going to bear the brunt of this tax burden, which, of course, is how virtually every Republican tax plan works. But some of these things are radical, even by modern neoliberal standards. The tweet begins: leaked memo from U.S. House Budget Committee Republicans reveals Trump's tax handouts to the wealthy estimated at 1.2 trillion, includes repeal 15% corporate profit minimum tax, the elimination of estate tax for millionaires, lowers the corporate tax rate to 15%, reinstate corporate tax loopholes. Lowering the corporate tax to 15% is particularly extreme because even under Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, actually, under every president post like 19 every under every president post FDR, the tax rate has never fallen below 15%. When it was below 15%, the Great Depression happened. All throughout the course of American history, when we experienced such tremendous economic growth from the 40s into the 60s, the 70s, and even the 80s, the corporate tax rate was higher because corporations have all of this leftover money. They're not going to invest in the company. They're going to do stock buybacks. They're going to pay out dividends. They're going to give bonuses to the board members, the CEO, and everyone in the C-suite. There is no, there like you're just allowing them to put more money into their pocket. The memo also advocates for stripping away $80 billion from the IRS. This is so that the IRS can only go after lower income individuals because they are the easiest targets. When you're attempting to audit millionaires, multimillionaires, or people that are, hyper wealthy, you need a robust team of, I guess, accountants, lawyers to fully go through and analyze all of their transactions. If you gut the IRS, if you remove resources from the IRS, they are incapable of going after these individuals. And as we know, Donald Trump wants people like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk to hold on to as much wealth as possible, because the wealthier they are, the wealthier that he gets, because they are the ones who finance his campaigns. They are the ones who buy his fake $100,000 watches. They also want to tax hospitals and eliminate the charitable deduction for donations to hospitals. The memo also proposes a $1.9 trillion tariff on all imports. The tariff shit, oh my God, I literally cannot talk about tariffs without my fucking brain wanting to leak, because it's like, it's even worse than trying to explain arithmetic to a toddler, because the toddler at that age is most likely fundamentally incapable of understanding what you're trying to say. They just learned how to talk, and now you want them to do math. It's not going to happen. Donald Trump is 80 years old. He's been president once before. You would think, and this guy also went to Penn, the Wharton School of Business, allegedly. You would think that he would have understood by taking Economics 101 that tariffs don't necessarily generate wealth, that they are a protectionist measure implemented by the United States government to spur manufacturing production, or just spur commerce within the United States. You can impose this tariff all you want, but there's no guarantee that it's going to generate all of this money. Beyond that, it's also likely for you to lose more money than you would probably initially think, because you are now entering a trade war with these companies. We saw Canada Prime Minister, I don't even know if he's former Prime Minister, recently resigned Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as well as the Ontario Conservative Premier Doug Ford. They both said that it's not entirely unlikely that we cut off all trade with the US if they implement these tariffs and violate the agreement that we have on the books. You're destabilizing your trade network for no reason. There is no objective, rational reason for him to do this. Now, he has since, of course, walked back all of these comments on tariffs. He said that a lot of these will be looked at on a case by case basis, which is relatively normal. For example, right now, there's no tariff levied on electronics that come from China. So, like phones, gaming consoles, those are exempt from tariffs, whereas something like steel, maybe I don't have it. I don't have all of the. I'm not an encyclopedia of tariff exceptions, but like steel might be tariffed, right? Because you again want to use that as a way to fund steel in America. But if there isn't already the foundation, the tariff isn't doing anything. The whole point of a tariff is to make it more expensive to import a good than to produce it in the country. Of course, you have to remember when it comes to tariffs, natural resources, food, like we have to import avocados from Central America, right? There are some natural resources that we can't make here. So to just have an all-encompassing tariff policy is bad business. But Donald Trump isn't necessarily the most astute businessman. So he doesn't understand the fundamental market ideas of trade, of global trade. To pay for the tax breaks for the wealthy, the memo proposes 2.2 million in tax hikes for middle and lower class families, includes repeal green energy tax credits. I believe that he wants to just get rid of sustainable rebates entirely. As you guys know, it does vary by state, I believe. But if you buy an electric car, if you buy a hybrid, you do get a rebate from either the state government or for the federal government. You could also get certain rebates for installing solar panels, or if you have a gas furnace, you can get a rebate for turning it to electrical. These are ways that the government can incentivize green energy and also make it a little bit cheaper for the consumer, because regular people don't have the money to spend on getting an electric heater installed, because it can be upwards of $1,000 to $3,000. Corporations do, on the other hand. So this is just again all a part of like his anti green energy agenda. He wants to not only get rid of these tax credits, but he basically just wants to stop all sustainable energy production, which of course is going to be a disaster. Eliminate mortgage interest deduction. I should know this as a homeowner. I don't, because I'm an idiot, but you can write off the interest on your mortgage up until 750,000, I believe, is the current number. That will reduce it to 500,000. Raise taxes on single parents and students. This is particularly devious because the single mom who works two jobs to clothe and feed her two children is going to see a tax hike. They're going to eliminate head of household filing status. The students is pertinent to scholarships. They want you to pay tax on scholarships, which, if I remember correctly, functions as almost a double tax, because you pay taxes on the scholarship and then you have to go and apply for more financial aid. So you have to take on more student loans. Just really, really insidious stuff. This tracks with the Republican agenda of just keeping everyone stupid. They want a dumb population. They don't want people to get good educations, because generally the more education you receive, the more left-leaning you become. There was a study where conservatives were like, isn't it weird that like 90+% of academic professors are left-wing? It's not a coincidence. The more you understand how the world works, the more you realize that conservative ideology is dangerous. Is dangerous for everybody. They also want to completely dismantle the Department of Education and give education back to the states. Keep in mind, the states already control curriculums. The Department of Education really only handles like funding, grants, they collect data, stuff like that. And it's frustrating and it's sickening because you're taking this out on children. Children do not deserve to have to be subject to this, right? I don't give a fuck about my mortgage interest deduction being taken away. I'll deal. But a child in Oklahoma who can't get a good education, they are less likely to be able to change the prospects of themselves and their family. Eliminate credit for child care. I believe they're also looking to do something with the child tax credit. I don't recall the specifics of it exactly. The memo was also targeting vulnerable groups and individuals, especially the elderly, disabled, and impoverished families. It takes aim at supplemental security income, temporary assistance for needy families, and the SNAP program, which are food benefits. I believe one of the provisions specifies that if you are a minor who is eligible for SSI, you have to be able to go to school. You have to physically be in a school to qualify for this. It's just so unnecessary. These people have already been beaten down by society. They're doing everything in their power to make things work, and the wealthy and the ruling class are taking out they're taking out, I don't even want to say taking out their frustrations, probably the frustration that these folks even exist. They just want to continue to beat them down further. Healthcare services for millions are also at risk. This memo targets weakening or scrapping the following: the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid, nursing home staff, Medicare. Trump tried to repeal the ACA his first go around. He had concepts of a healthcare plan, as we know, during his debate. What's funny about this is his supporters, the Republicans base, they love the Affordable Care Act, but they hate Obamacare. It is blatant disinformation and a horrible messaging from Republican talking heads and lawmakers that they will allow their base, their electorate, people who need medical care, to not understand that these are the same thing, regardless of Obamacare, whatever the fuck it's called. By the way, it's actually Romney Care. It is a very conservative healthcare reform. Like, Mitt Romney was the brainchild behind this. This is a necessary institution. Medicare. Motherfuckers love Medicare. It is one of, if not, it's one of like the three most liked government agencies, right up there with Social Security and NASA. Do you know why? Because it works. Medicaid works for people. Medicare works for people. It provides them tangible benefits. It allows them to buy insulin at $35. It allows there to be a certain cap on drugs, which President Trump removed. Medicare, the drug companies will now once again be able to go back to charging whatever they want for drugs. Nursing home staff, we don't have enough infrastructure in elder care, and it's a shame because these folks, they're the most vulnerable. These people have put their time in. They've worked for however many years. They've helped build this society. They've helped build this country into what it is today. They've educated generations. They've built skyscrapers and buildings and water treatment plants and everything, and they're not allowed to live with some dignity in a nursing home. Consumer protections are also on the chopping block. We know this means it'll be easier for corporations to scam and steal from ASEANs? What the fuck? I've never seen that from people in the U.S. This memo cuts the following. The Securities and Exchange Commission, this literally serves the benefit of nothing to anybody unless you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. The SEC works to make sure that there are no scams going on in our mega capitalistic corporate owned society. The reason they're feckless is because they, much like every other financial agency, does not have the means to do their job properly. Investors, venture capitalists, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, they don't want the SEC to be breathing down their throats. They don't want the FTC to be breathing down their throats. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has come under tremendous fire over the last couple of months. You've had multiple I'm just going to call him that from now on. Fuck it. You've had multiple vulture capitalists go on Joe Rogan and talk about how corrupt the CFPB is because they debank people. Meanwhile, the CFPB is responsible for returning money to consumers who have been scammed. It is an objectively good institution. The fact that at least one governmental agency is looking out for the financial well-being of the 99% is tremendous, but the scammers at the top, they don't want that because they want to be able to scam you. That's the whole thing. The more money that they can make from you, regardless of how shady it is still money in their pocket. The Office of Financial Research, I don't really know what that does. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. This memo also reverses all climate change protections and replaces it with items that will damage climate change even further, again targeting national parks, weather services, while expanding coal and offshore drilling. This is more or less an extension of Donald Trump's first tax reform bill. It is just as bad. He's basically trying to do the same thing again, at least in regards to specific tax breaks and tax hikes for people in whatever bracket they're in. The first round of tax cuts was mostly a tax cut for everybody. However, the top 1% were still experiencing the same tax cuts, even though people in smaller tax brackets, namely lower and middle class Americans, saw those tax decreases go back to where they were before. They were sunsetted in 2025. I don't know the specifics, the specific tax rates right now, but there is one thing that we need to understand when it comes to conservative tax policy. This is all rooted in Reaganomics, that if you slash regulation, if you don't tax the wealthy, if you don't tax corporations, they will be able to invest more in their company, and those benefits will trickle down. Nothing has trickled down. It's been 50 years, and the rich have only gotten richer. What's frightening about this is, as much of a demon, as horrible as Ronald Reagan was, these measures would be radical even by his standards. As I mentioned before, a corporate tax rate at 15% is like half of what it was at the beginning of Ronald Reagan's presidency. Even the highest marginal tax rate was higher in Ronald Reagan's tenure than it is now. Forget about even going back to the 50s and 60s when the top marginal rate was like 91%, and that equates today for any dollar that you make over 3 million, the government takes 90 cents from it. That is how you rebuild this economy. The more you tax wealthy people and the more you tax corporations, the less you will have to do for like property tax, for example. This is a big debate, especially when you compare property taxes in the US to countries in the EU. European countries, not all of them, some of them have low property tax rates, but they make up for that by having higher corporate tax rates. They do, of course, also have VAT taxes, but also in a country like Norway, for example, people tend to have higher earnings because they have, one, a well-paying job, but also they're in a union, and the union can collectively bargain for them. Like in France, these unions collectively bargain for 97% of the workforce. If you're taking more money from corporations, from wealthy people, whether that be in terms of taxing their investments like capital gains, which should be done, by the way, and if you say otherwise, you're silly, because if I can have a capital gains tax in the form of a property tax, why can't they have their assets taxed, right? It's the same thing. You don't know the intrinsic value of this thing, but yet I still have to pay property taxes, which I don't mind. I don't mind paying property taxes, straight up. But people like Elon Musk, whose entire wealth is tied up in Tesla stock, they should be taxed as well, because then you can build a more robust welfare state. You can expand Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We can have good infrastructure. We can do this green energy transition. We can get high-speed rail. We can do all of these things just by taxing the 1% in corporations. This is a radical right-wing economic agenda. This will crash the economy. In conjunction with mass deportation, if Trump does manage to execute it, we have the potential to experience a depression unlike anything ever before, right? It will literally look like we will be a feudal society, right? This is the second Gilded Age, to steal from Kyle Kalinske. These are bad. These are bad, straight up.